What's up?
Hello, everybody. It's another Sunday night. I hope you're all having a great week. I hope you all are preparing a really fun Halloween season. I'm pretty excited for for the end of October and all that stuff. We also have a great set of creators to talk to today. We're going to talk a little bit about Don't Push the Red Button, and we're also going to talk about a book I'm really excited to go over called The Fabled Offering with our guest, Nandor Fox Shaffer. Nandor, how's it going?
Hey guys. Hey Ben and Joey. It's going well. I've been looking forward to speaking with you all day. I've been thinking about, just what we're going to talk about and going over the book. So I'm really happy to be here.
It's awesome to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
So, I have to say, and then we'll bring this artwork up in a little bit, but
Sure.
This is a book that I've been looking forward to for a long time, ever since I saw the sort of pre-launch art. Really cool stuff. I kind of think it's like a 70s sci-fi vibe it has to
Yeah.
it. A really fun book. So tell us like the elevator pitch for The Fabled Offering.
So The Fabled Offering is a 40-page mature sci-fi fantasy one-shot that follows Grand Princess Aurelia on a quest to save herself and her kingdom from her past traumas. And she is on this journey while pregnant. She's carrying an unborn child um, to this mountain that she's trying to get to in this other world, this world we've never seen before. And she's trying to get to this deity called Sizen, and will he accept her offering? So that's kind of the pitch of it. Is she's alone, and she's the stakes are so high for her, and what she's having to sacrifice and her own struggles. And it's a love letter to everything I love about science fiction and fantasy, like in one story, as much as I could possibly try to cram into it. But yeah, I've loved the genres for so long, and I've never written a story in this genre before. So it's a real pleasure to finally bring it to everyone and to kind of show everyone what I've been working on for a long time.
Yeah. What I think is really cool about this is when I saw the first few posts you made about it, with the artwork looking the way it did, not just necessarily as the artwork is, I think, like almost Bill Sienkiewicz quality. I mean, it's top notch stuff.
Yeah.
It's better than what you will see at Marvel or DC right now, on an average level. What I think was really smart about what you've done is when I saw those first images, I got exactly what you're going for. Like I got, okay, this is kind of Dune, David Lynch, Jodorowsky sort of vibe. And
yeah,
it really communicated that very quickly, which I think is a thing people really need to pay attention to when they're doing Kickstarters and crowdfunding stuff. How did you find, how did you meet this artist, and how did you kind of create the artwork that was used to promote this?
Yeah, so Marco Roblin is the artist for the book, and he's only done one or two other comics that I know of that I've seen. I actually found him through a Kickstarter campaign a couple of years ago called The Numinous Nomads, and it was this espionage time travel book that looked really cool. And I remember seeing a few panels of his work on social media, and I was like, I have to work with this guy on something, and I didn't know what it would be, but I always have this little short list of creators that I'd love to work with and artists that I'd love to work with. And so I jotted his name down. I was like, okay. And because initially I had started working on the Fabled Offering with another artist, and he was a traditional painter.
Oh, okay.
And but it was going to take so long for the book to be finished because it was going to be traditionally painted and much more expensive too. And so I had to kind of weigh my options. Like, do I want to go that route and wait so long for this book that I had finished writing and I was really excited about? Should I wait to share it with people, or should I kind of go in a different direction and still try to like keep the soul of the project together? And then I thought of Marco, and I thought, I wonder if he would be up for this, and if he would be available for it even. And so once I told him about the project, he was excited, more excited than any other artist I've ever worked with for it, because he loves a lot of the same things that I love, and a lot of the same properties that I love, like Dune, and a lot of like heavy metal magazine, and like
Mhm.
70s 80s kind of style of comics. And so uh when we started working together, I had put together this visual document. It was pages upon pages of like how I wanted the world to feel, and I used a lot of reference images from films and comics and things that I love, to do my best to describe the kind of world that I'm seeing and that I wanted to
Mhm.
portray. I wanted him to kind of capture some of the aesthetics, and so I put together this visual document and I sent it over to him, and we just started kind of hashing out the feel of it and the look of it. And then he started with a page or two, and from the onset, when I saw like one of his first pages that he sent me, I was like, this is really going to work, and this is going to be so different from anything else that you would see on Kickstarter or on the newsstands. It's so unique, and like what I love about his work is that you see it, and you have to take your time with it. It kind of stops you in your tracks, and you have to go, wait a second, like this is really something. This is really special. This is something you don't see every day. So that's really how I decided, if it's doing that to me, when I've seen his work previously, I can't imagine a 40-page book, of each page
Mhm.
looking like this, and how cool that would be. So that's kind of where we started.
Well, I mean, and I'm going to bring this up real quick here, but the artwork in this really, just from the first time I saw it, I was like, this is something special. This looks very much like, I would say, I would compare it to, in the early 90s, it was a special thing to see a painted book, or basically just any book that the artwork was not like exactly, sort of standard comic book artwork, like your Dan
Yeah.
Jurgens type reading sort of thing. If you saw a painted book, it was something special. And that's exactly what I thought when I saw the first images from this. It was really, I mean, it's referenced, I think, but it's strong stuff. I think it's referenced in a way that's really, you can tell this guy can draw. These
Yeah.
are strong images, and this book feels like an event. This is something I really wanted to check out. So, that's kind of what my entry point was to this. And I've seen your other books. I think I backed. What was your previous book? That was the
Manchild? Was it
Yes.
Manchild? Yeah.
I liked that, and I love the artwork in it. But this was basically just a very different, um, strong sort of, I wouldn't say statement. When I saw the artwork for this, it was like, hey, this is a
Yeah.
big deal. And
Yeah, what's so interesting too about Marco's work, is, it has that Bill Sienkiewicz look, but what's so, like I had to ask Marco a couple of times, "Now wait a second. I thought you were I thought you were a digital artist."
Mhm.
And he was like, "I am. Like this like none of this is
Wow.
traditional, but like you look at it,
It looks
and
traditional, yeah.
yeah,
oh,
everything about it screams like I could touch this. I could touch this paper,
mhm,
like you could feel the texture, and the texture of it, and like the depth of it all is so convincing that like I had to ask him, like, wait a second, like this isn't digital. And he's like, no, it is. So like he's able to work his magic with it in a way that I don't
Yeah.
know if many artists could, or do it
mhm,
as well. And so that's something about it that I just find fascinating. And I you always get that shot of adrenaline and like dopamine when you see like a new page from like an artist, or
mhm.
artwork or whatever.
Yeah.
But with his in particular, it's just a next level of being striking to me.
Oh, it really is, and I think it
Yeah.
combines. To me, it did look digital. I mean, probably because I'm an artist and I really
You have an artist.
Yeah.
get into the
Listen,
nuts and bolts of
you
that.
have a unique artist eye.
Yeah, but to what really, I mean, really just punched me in the face was it had a very digital feel to me, but it also
Mhm.
reminded me so much of like if you look at the colors from like Batman Year One, the
Yeah.
expanded edition where it's like a little bit more wasn't the newsprint version that it just had that it had that color
Yeah,
palette, it had that amount of texture, and some of that he's doing with his inks, which is also really cool. But it
yeah,
really looks it looks old and new at the same time. I was so struck by that.
I
And
love I love that you said that, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like that was a huge part of what I wanted this book to feel like. I wanted it to feel like you're going back in time and you're picking up a book that you missed. You know,
yeah,
like, oh, like I missed this like from 20 or 30, 40 years
yeah,
ago, but like it has that timeless flavor to it. And that also for me as the writer of the book, there's a time travel element, paradox element to the story. And so like having that art style be a part of that too,
mhm,
it was just icing on the cake for me. I was like, this is
yeah,
a marriage, you know, of like the best of both
yeah.
worlds.
No, what I had in my notes that I was just about to say was this looks like a remastered version of some comic from the 80s. I mean, it
Yeah.
really has
mhm,
that vibe to it. Despite the, if you really look closely, you can kind of see, yeah, I think this is digital. I think this is referenced in this way. That if I really dug into it, I think it was done, this year. But
Right.
it really, really digs into that feel. It does have that like, I guess,
yeah,
sort of legacy, nostalgic sort of vibe, and
Yeah.
just get a little bit into the writing side of it, I guess, a little bit, and I guess also the marketing as well. I think what you've done with the basic like pitch of this character, it's a pregnant woman. She has to go up a mountain. It's very simple, and I think it's also
Mhm.
very visual. When you see that picture of that character, basically what your objectives are as far as what they're trying to do, what their obstacles are going to be. How much did you think that out and plan that out as far as like, did you want the story to be like a complete, like like sort of something where it's very clear and that you dial into it, or is it something where you wanted to maybe be a little bit more, there's going to be stuff that you unfold as the story goes on?
Yeah. When I was conceptualizing everything and thinking about like brainstorming what kind of obstacles that Aurelia would face, I I always start my stories like from like it's all about character for me, and I think the best stories are, and I knew I didn't want the plot to be, there's some complex layers to it, but I really wanted it to feel straightforward and like you could sit in the car and be along for the ride and not like question where we're going or what's happening. It's like it's very direct. It's like this is her goal, this is what she's trying to do. The interesting stuff happens in between, like from when she leaves and trying to get to this, but also uh trying to get to this goal, it's not necessarily guaranteed that even when she gets there she'll get what she wants. And that was the really interesting thing for me, was like what would it be like to struggle towards something for so long and not even know if you'll be successful at it, and having to not only take care of yourself but take care of a baby. It's just like it's very the stakes of it are so high, and really it all goes back to Aurelia's own motivations and her journey. And I thought trying to add to any more like plot threads or make what she's going through any more complex for the reader would get in the way of what she needs to do, and would like just make it harder to read and harder to follow than it needed to be.
Yeah, I think that's. I was going to ask you about Saga, if that was an influence on you at all. Like, because when you first, whenever that came out, I think it was 2011 or something like that. I saw the first ads for that. It was, the pregnant woman and the guy and the baby, and
Right.
it was just like very clear what their goals were, just from an image. And I think that
Yeah.
you've done something like that. I think that's actually, when you're looking at doing stuff in crowdfunding, it's so hard to get people's attention, and it's so hard to really clearly and simply communicate what you're trying to do. And I think you did a really smart thing in how you've put artwork out about this, that it really, you see the woman, you can state her goal. It's a very quick elevator pitch. And I think that's,
Yeah.
kind of what you were saying before. I think it was my next question, but you've really, I would say you've done something that is a very quick selling point. And I was almost curious, as did you start with the something that would be a very quick elevator pitch, a very quick sell, and work backwards from there? Or did you kind of take a story you had and say, like, okay, how do I really quickly distill this into a very artistic, and in terms of the text, like, how do I just explain this very quickly? Because I think this is one of the most succinct projects I've seen in a long time, as far as, hey, this is what this is.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've learned from my previous projects. I have Seasons, Lifeline, and Manchild, and all of those have been, I feel like, sometimes a little too meta or a little too highbrow. Like, they've always been hard for me to condense in a pitch. And so going into this book, I was like, how can I escape that? How can I escape that problem when I'm trying to talk about a story or talk about a new story? And I was definitely intentionally trying to um, condense I what this next project might be into something really simple, so that I could pitch it really easily, and I wouldn't have to I wouldn't have all of these complex ideas or themes kind of rolling around my head while I was trying to pitch it. Because when I'm at signings or conventions, you'll have that person that asks you, well, what is this about? And like, for me, there's so many ideas that pop into my head, because there's so many things that I'm thinking about. Like, well, it's about this, but it's really about this, because there's layers to your stories. And so I'll trip myself up sometimes when I'm talking about uh, my stories. And so this time around, I was like, well, I still want to have those layers, but I really want everything to just feel like it's easy to digest and easy to follow, and very, it's very simple. Because again, I wanted all of the complexities to be found in her, not in necessarily the plot. And so that was really my goal. And I think, you know, seeing again that visual element of a pregnant woman trying to climb a mountain, I was like, that just seems impossible. That seems
It
like,
also kind
yeah,
of
like,
writes itself, in terms of,
yeah.
okay, there's the drama. I get that. It's very much there.
Right, right. That's kind of where I was. I was like, it doesn't. That's all there needs to be. Like, that's hard enough. Like, that's difficult enough. That's we don't need to add anything else. But getting to that point, and kind of fleshing out the aftermath of that, um, was where it really got into what I really love about storytelling, and then just a lot of the more juicy details about kind of how this world works, and what we could do. But and I'd never written a female character before, for a central protagonist of a story, and that was definitely a new challenge too, because um, I didn't want to miss that opportunity. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to really try to get into the head of someone, and flesh them out as much as possible. And I needed to do that, and the only way to do that was to trim the fat of any plot devices that could get in the way of that.
I definitely want to come back to that. That was kind of a question I was going to ask, and I have in my notes about this versus Manchild.
Right.
But I want to switch over for just a minute to another guest, Matt Mortal, who is a creator on Don't Push the Red Button, which I'm going to share.
Hello, everybody listening to me okay?
We are.
Yeah.
All right.
So Matt is doing a story in this anthology, which is a really cool project. We've looked at some stuff from. Matt, tell us a little bit about your story in Don't Push the Red Button.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to be here. Have a good night, everyone. Good evening, everybody. My story is called Induction and Destruction. I'm the writer for it, and it concerns a presidential election that goes awry, let us say, by the sudden introduction of a third party that's very interested in it. And of course, that party brings with him the button, the elusive button that all stories in this anthology are themed about. Of course, the button that can change your life with one press and can end another at the same time. So that's essentially the premise of the story of Induction Destruction. I'm working alongside Victor Fujita, another Brazilian illustrator. I'm Brazilian, by the way. I didn't think I mentioned that. But yeah, that's the gist of it.
Very cool. I remember reading I've read the pitch, the sort of one line for each of the stories in this, and yours really stuck out. That seemed probably because we're going to an election season here in America. It's on everyone's minds, and we're all, I think, bracing ourselves to see how ugly and horrible it's going to be. But I feel like I saw that one and I was like, yeah, that's a good story. I want to read that. Like, that's a good pitch. Was that something you thought about when you were coming up with the idea for it? Or was it like, did you kind of look at current events, or was it just something you had in your head for a while that you applied to that setting?
I think I'm very I think about politics a lot. I think I'm very politically motivated in some things, and I think the last few elections, both in the U.S. and in Brazil, my homeland where I reside right now, have been let us say complicated in some sense, and that has stuck with me. And particularly the last election in Brazil last year was a very tense election, very grim election, and that stuck with me in my head. But I was also inspired by other things that I quite love, like the name of the story, for example, comes from the Edwin Starr song "War," as you recall, which I listen to a lot. It's a favorite song of mine. So I was listening to it, and with the election themes in my head, and the whole thing. And I was thinking, I was also inspired by Dr. Strangelove by Stanley Kubrick, which is another film that I'm very fond of. So this whole themes of war, election, and induction, destruction, who wants to die, that sort of thing was rattling in my brain. I don't think I was consciously inspired by the American election next year, but I think maybe subconsciously, because in some way or another, everyone has to look at the American elections, particularly us in the third world, in the global south, as it's also said. We have to keep an eye on it because, fate of the world and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean,
what a perfect name for this, right? This story curated by Oscar Osorio, and he's from Peru, and the whole premise of this is if you were offered a red button that would change your life, would you push it? But somebody would have to die. Somebody close to you would have to die. And would you still push it? And so we're going to follow 11 different stories with over 30 different creators on this anthology. Tons of different really great rewards. We have a cover by Francesca Fantini, cover by Liana Kangas. And then you also have standard covers. You have holo covers and a glow-in-the-dark metal cover. Really, really cool stuff here. This one is and what's really cool is we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this. because it was created by Oscar, who lives in Peru. He wanted to create something that had many different peoples connected to this, and many different people of different colors and races, and I think he kind of did that. We have people from Peru, we have Brazilians, we have Italians, we have Spanish, Mexican, like all kinds of different heritages, all from all over the world, that are involved in this story. So, um, and I think all these different stories that kind of within these things, kind of pertained to all everybody's different cultures and their lifestyles. So it's really really interesting to kind of see this kind of come through, and then come together. Um, I know Ben, you kind of been on the back end of some of the stuff too. Did you kind of get that idea of that's kind of the feel of this story, that there's a lot of these different people are coming through this story?
Yeah, I think it's a really clever framing device. It's kind of a Twilight Zone ish idea, the red
Yeah.
button. It's a good framing device that I think is open to a lot of different creators, a lot of different, sort of genres as well. And when I looked at the pitches for each of the main stories, and I think there are a few stories that might be unlocked if we can reach a certain goal, I thought that's a really good device. It works in sci-fi. It works in like very grounded sort of fiction, and I think it can capture a lot of different creators, the zeitgeist of different people and their cultures. I mean, like that's a really strong sort of centralizing theme, and that's what I think is really cool about this.
Yeah, totally. And what's
Yeah.
really cool is because of that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just mentioning that you mentioned Twilight Zone. Yeah, that was also my first thought when
Oh yeah,
the call was put out. When I saw, I was like, "Hey, it's like Twilight Zone." I always loved Twilight Zone, particularly the original with Rod Serling. So I was like, "Hey, it's a good opportunity for me to do something of a Twilight Zone of myself." Let us say, if I and thankfully I was picked. My pitch was selected. So yeah, the Twilight Zone is a very good. I was also thinking of the comic book horror anthologies of the 1950s, I think. Tales from the
Yeah.
Crypt, Vault of Horror, that sort of thing. Of course, this is I think a little more uh, diverse, let us say, than
Yeah.
and that sort of heyday. But yeah, I also think it's in the same wavelength. Another sort of thing that I like, these anthologies and like, but more international, I suppose.
yeah, and
Which is
Yeah.
I think it has the vibe of something that's, if you look at the EC comics from the 50s, the kind of short stories that were very, they generally had like an ironic ending, which is not to say that these all do, but like it was open to that type of storytelling. And I think Twilight Zone again was the first thing I thought of when I saw the idea behind the series. The first thought that came into my head was Rod Serling, delivering a pitch for, like, imagine, if you will, a red button.
Yeah.
It just really worked that way, and I think it's a strong device, and the fact that works so universally, and we have a ton of great creators on this, I think it makes it a really strong proposition as far as a crowdfunding campaign goes.
Yeah, with the thing with anthologies, right, are a lot of the times that it's really hard for them to kind of do something diverse like this, where you have one frame narrative that kind of is able to travel beyond genres, right? And I think this is really cool that this frame narrative is going to be able to kind of stretch beyond those borders of things that you can do, and which is very unique in anthologies. And when you can find a story like that, or a narrative frame narrative that you can place in a position like that, I think it's very unique and something to kind of definitely look into. um what other kind of rewards we got? We got tons of really cool stuff here that we can look at. um so because this is also talking about unique, this is kind of a unique thing that Oscar wanted to do. He's very about the indie scene and the independent creators. So what he wanted to do is he wanted to make sure that everybody was paid a generous page rate. So what he's going to do with this is he wants to make sure that this thing gets funded before he even has anybody you land down actual things. We have a timeline where we're gonna have um different we're gonna have artwork, and then we're gonna have scripts, artwork, and then the printing process, right? But we're not gonna do that until this is funded. And the reason why he wanted to do that is because he wanted to make sure that he hits a certain goal, so that all these creators these 30 plus creators on the project were paid a generous rate. And when I say generous, it's better than the regular rate that what's out there, right? And it's still kind of in within that placement, right? And then his idea is, if you continue to go further, if we hit past 13K, 14, 15, 16K, he's thinking about unlocking increasing that pay rate for each of those creators, which is really unique, right? Because you see these different people that and I don't want to say, because I've never been involved in anything like that before, where creators they talk about the pay rates, right? But it's not always the best pay rate, because you have to now split it with that many creators, right? There's so many creators on the project now, you have to split it. But here he wants to make sure that everything is taken care of, and maybe that everything is the way it should be, and the way we want to be treated as creators. And I thought that was very unique, and when I was speaking with him about this project, that's the part where I was reluctant, right? I was like, okay, listen, this is a pretty big thing you're biting off here. Like this is a pretty ambitious campaign. You want to pay all these guys a really great rate. You even want to increase the pay rate the more money that this thing makes, right? I love the idea, but I'm like, we got to think about this realistically, because this is a business, right? But I'm starting to eat my words here, because the campaign's doing really good, and I think his vision of what he had, I think he was onto something here. So I think this is just he's created such a great team, and everybody's been really involved, and one of the best teams that I've seen actually getting out there and actually involved in the marketing, which is really cool, because a lot of the times creators, it's really hard for them to kind of figure out how to get out there and market their work, let alone even get out there and do it at all. So I thought it was really unique, and this project is just such a cool thing to kind of see on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good to see. I mean, again, I'm an artist. I'm always looking at things through that lens. It takes a long time to draw a page. That's what makes it, I think, really important to say to people, to backers, hey, we do want this money for the team. And when you're a writer, I'm not to knock writers at all, but it just doesn't take the time investment that artwork does. I
Mhm.
think it's very good to be upfront about what crowdfunding is, and then how that really pays the sort of the longer investment that an artist has to make into producing books like this. And I like when people are upfront about that, because first of all, it's honest. Second of all, it
Mhm.
really communicates to backers, hey, it takes a long time for people to create this work, and it's worth investing in. And it's
Yeah.
really great to see people be upfront about that, and to just illustrate, pun not intended, what it takes for someone to create these comic book pages, because it does
Right.
take a long time to do.
Hmm. Yeah, and like, this is the thing. I really want this thing to fund, and I've got my ideas on the and I don't want to say this, right, because I'm manifesting this thing, like, funding very well, and I'm manifesting that all these creators are gonna get a really really amazing page rate, because that's the goal of this, right? The goal is to get this out there, to get into people's hands, to get it read, and look back and say, wow, everybody did an amazing job. This is wonderful, right? And then still have you guys, we want you guys to have this on your table to sell as well. So we want this thing to get out there into the world, and that's the goal, right? So we're almost at $4,000, which unlocks a new goal at 4,000. So we're at 3,883 right now. So the next one is, you unlocks a bookmark, and you get some back matter. You get some scripts and concept art added to the story. Um, and then there's some mystery unlocks too after this 10,000 goals is reached. So just keep going, guys. We can get there. We only have a handful of days left, with about 20 something days left, I believe,
Mhm.
on this goal. on this one. 23 days left, 86 backers. We had about 100 people plus follow this one, so we haven't even reached all our people that have followed this one yet. So make sure you guys are telling some friends out there.
Yeah, and I've seen some of the artwork in our Discord, the behind the scenes artwork, the concept stuff. It's some pretty cool stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I almost wanted to reach out and say, hey, could I post this or could I put this on the show? But
Yeah.
didn't want to jump the gun there. But it is some cool stuff, and I'm excited to see it keep going.
Yeah, everything that has been shared in the Discord channel is good to be shared.
Okay, cool.
So we're okay there. But yeah, it's some gorgeous stuff. There's some fantasy stories, there's drama, there's horror, very very cool stuff, suspense, thriller. Like I love the many different genres that this is in there. And what's cool is he had when he put out the submission, he was just expecting, you know, small thing happening, but he had over 100 people submit, and he had to narrow it down to like 11 about like 14 stories. So it was kind of funny to kind of see that work. It was really cool.
I remember when it when that call went out, and I was like, oh, I'd love to be a part of this, but I was working on some other scripts at the time, so I couldn't be a part of it. But I really like, I've been watching this campaign, and I've been kind of seeing it formulate, and even before it launched and everything. And I think it's one of the coolest anthologies that I've seen on the platform. So
yeah, we appreciate that. And it is I've been involved in a handful of anthologies, helping them market and stuff, and they're all gorgeous, they're all beautiful,
right.
but this one is probably one of the most unique campaigns, one of the most unique anthologies that I've seen. Very very cool. And what's really cool is we haven't even gotten to tell it everybody yet, but me and Ben were talking about this before. There was the Kickstarter Forward Fund actually donated a really good amount to this campaign, which is really cool. So they even received a grant for this campaign, so to help this one. So we got to make sure that this one gets funded, guys.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was really great to see. So to kind of jump back to the Fabled Offering a little bit, Nandor, and I kind of wanted to talk about what I saw a lot of things I touched on before about the simplicity of the pitch that you had for this, and in terms of the artwork. It made a lot of sense. It really communicated everything you were trying to do very quickly. I loved Manchild, and I backed that one. But I was kind of surprised, partially, and this is not really all on you, but it's like it reminded me of a lot of projects I'd seen, and I would say like the early aughts, the 2000s. And it wasn't exactly what I thought. I liked what it was, but it wasn't necessarily what I thought it was going to be. Whereas I think this looks very like it's a very straightforward pitch. And again, to kind of what we touched on earlier, you see a pregnant woman climbing a mountain. There's a story there. You can kind of work that out. Were you trying, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but like, were you trying to do something a little simpler in this one as a reaction to that, or is it just something that developed on its own?
It really did develop on its own. I do, like I said before, I do remember when I was brainstorming the story and working out all the beats of it and outlining it. I wanted to not get in the weeds of how much complexity I would bring to the pitch, but I wanted to also not Manchild is such a unique and interesting project because I'm trying to tell two stories at the same time, and so that's a huge challenge for Manchild. But it's also the fun of it is because I get to kind of bob and weave and alternate and try to meld the two stories together. But it's a harder sell, I think, because you're having to get invested in two separate stories at the same time. But that's also the hook of it is you're like, what's the connection here? And so going into the Fabled Offering, it was refreshing to get back to a story that I didn't have to worry about that, and think about having to juggle all these different characters, and that I was trimming everything down to its most like simplistic formula for storytelling. It's like one character, one goal, um, one one desire that she has and her motivation to do this. And I still think people are going to be really surprised when they read the book, because I still throw my Nandor kind of curveballs in there, and make things a little more interesting than you would think, and shake things up a little bit. But for the most part, there's a lot of uh, easy access to it. It's very accessible. It's a very accessible story, and you feel for her. You see her in a few pages, and you're like, you want her to accomplish her task. You want her to be able to follow through with what she wants to do, and because we naturally would feel that way for someone like her. So, and there's a lot of mystery behind why is she alone? If she's a princess, why isn't her kingdom supporting her? Why aren't they helping her? And there's also, what is her motivation for leaving her kingdom behind to get to this place? And it's somewhat not necessarily a spoiler, but I would say that Saizen, the deity she's trying to get to, I wouldn't necessarily say that, he doesn't look like a very good guy. He doesn't look like a good guy. He looks like kind of villainous. So why does she want to talk with him? Why does she want to offer him? What does she have to offer him? So that adds to it. But yeah, I wanted to really try to keep it as simple as possible.
No, I think that's something I struggle with. I'm, again, an artist first, and we actually had a guest on a couple weeks ago that was doing a detective story. We didn't quite get to this point, but it was in my notes. I thought to myself, I could never write a detective story. That's just too much for me to.
I've thought about that before
to
too.
do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm very impressed when a writer can just appreciate the differences between what you're juggling in, say, Man-Child, which is like two separate narratives that obviously have a lot to do with one another.
Right.
And then something that's really straightforward. And like how different a process is that? Hard for you to break down, or is it easier? Because I could see it being much harder to be more simplistic and more straightforward like this is. I could also, for me, it would be harder to manage. Like, I'm writing the next Scarlet Twilight now. I have a bunch of plot threads on an Excel sheet. I am just really struggling with like how to make that all work out in a pacing way that makes sense and is fun.
Yeah. Because
I'm
you're
not
doing
great at
somewhat
a
of
lot of
a
characters.
crisis thing with
Yeah.
that, Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's I would say this was a lot more comfortable for me. And with Man-Child, it was just because you only have so much real estate on in an issue and on a page, and so I'm like, how am I supposed to complete these two narratives and complete them in a satisfying way in uh, all these single issues? And it's going to be a 6-issue series, but it just made it that much more. I was like, I'm making it harder for myself. Why am I doing this to myself? And with this book, even though I guess in some respects it's somewhat similar to that, just because while this is a one shot, of course I would hope it would become more. But I knew going into it, I'm creating this world, and I did all this world building and was thinking about just how it functions and how these deities operate, and what their role is, and what kind of world is this, and what kind of technology do they have, and all that kind of stuff. It was challenging to try to condense all of that into 40 pages. And originally, when I had my first pass of it, it was around 32 or 34 pages. But I was like, I need more. I need more space, and I need this to be fleshed out a little bit better if I'm going to wow the readers as much as I want to. But trying to find that sweet spot of not not going too overboard with it, and to just throw caution to the wind and make it as big as I want the book to be, but try to make it as succinct and um, keep the pacing even enough, and that's something that is really important for comics in particular. It's like the page turns, how many panels are on a page, how you want to lead the reader to the next few pages, the way you capitalize on a page, or you build up to the climax of the issue. So trying to tell a story in a one shot that has a beginning, middle, and end, this is so different from anything else that I've done, because all of my other stories, I've had a lot more wiggle room and a lot more pages to work with. So in that regard, I'd say it's similar to Man-Child and the Challenge, just in terms of how much space I have to use, but keeping it to one character was like, that's what I love about storytelling, and I love very central character stories.
No, I do too. I think that's something that really I found this out when I had to cut August down from like 12 issues to 7 issues to 4 issues. It became a lot stronger, and it really, I was like, wow, this is way better, because you're just focusing.
Oh wow, that's a huge decline, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I know I'm really happy it happened that way. When I look back, it first of all, and I've mentioned this before, it helped me as soon as I had to do that. I worked out a ton of plot holes that I had problems with, and I'm like, wait a second, this, as soon as I rearranged the pieces of the puzzle, a lot of things became clear and just worked themselves out. The thing I was really delighted to see was that the pacing, the sort of roller coaster ride that a story needs to be, worked so much better when you're just on one character. And to go back a little bit, because you've actually, every note I took for what I wanted to talk about today, you've actually been 2 steps ahead of me and mentioned it.
Sorry.
I think you might be spying on me. I'm not sure. But to get what you were saying about the sort of, I think the logistics of what you communicate in this pitch, where you're when you see the pregnant woman in the mountain, it's a very clear goal. And I think everyone's sort of preconceptions about that, you see a pregnant woman alone, you're like, well, where's the guy? Obviously there's something that happened there. Where's, she's a queen, where's her kingdom? Are they not supporting her? Why is this army not? You've, I think, been really economical about what you're presenting, and the things you're leaving unsaid are obviously the sort of, I really hate this term, but I think it's very illustrative of what works, is the mystery box that J.J. Abrams talks about.
Right.
I think you have done things in a way that points to that. And I think that's something that I wanted to get to about crowdfunding, is when we're putting our books out and putting, just our marketing images even out, you really have to be like, hey, this can't just be Spider-Man doing something kind of boring. There are a lot of cool covers from the 80s of Batman like walking across a rooftop or something that I really love. But I also know that when it's a cool shot of Batman just not doing anything, it's going to be a shitty comic. He's going to be fighting a flea monster or something. I'm wise to that, and I was when I was about 12. But you really have to be smart, because we really have to be cognizant of the eyeballs we get in our images. That image might be the only time somebody sees this. We have to communicate so much, and I think that when you look at logistically the value proposition of your comic, you've got to be smart about what that image is. When you have the sort of kingdom with 2 worlds like we're seeing here, when you see the artwork, which of course is a value add in of itself, and then when you see the character and her obstacles, I think you kind of constructed this project logistically in a way that is very smart and tells everybody everything they need to know, and I think also what they're going to get when they read this. And I think it's really examples of that.
And it's really difficult too, right? When it comes to marketing, like when you get that first link for the pre-launch page, right? You only have that title card there, right? You have that title page, you have to make sure that it's a really great image, because you only have so many characters to tell everybody what it is, right? And you have two sections. You have the title and the synopsis there, and so you have to really tell everybody what it is. So you have to decide: do I tell them the synopsis of the book, and then pull them in with the story, or do I tell them what they were going to get? because and then you have to decide, right? Because is this book marketing this book, is it going to benefit from pulling people in by the story, or pulling people in by what we're offering? And it's really difficult, right? Like with push the red button, I felt like it was better to talk about what we're going to be offering right here, because you got this beautiful artwork and this really great story. It's probably better to pull them into with a story. So I'm actually curious. I don't think I've seen the title and what you guys have pulled. Can we scroll down and see what you actually use to pull to in the title card there, Ben? If we could
Oh,
see.
go up. Sorry.
Yeah.
My
See
bad.
what,
Doing the
because I'm
comments here.
curious to see how you pulled everybody in there.
Yeah. So this was the. Did you have a title card, or is this just a frame of the trailer?
So that is that is the cover for the book, and that's the new
Okay.
title card. The previous title card I had was actually the image of Aurelia kind of sitting down and holding her baby. It's on one of the pages. I think it's page oh I'll
I think I've seen that.
so it is, yeah, it's on that page. That
This one.
image
This
right
is the one
there.
I've
Yeah.
seen. Yeah.
That was, yeah, that's what we had for the longest time, because Marco and I were still working on the cover itself and trying to get the right image for it. But I knew that this when I saw this panel, I was like, that's perfect. Like that's all we need, because it's like
Yeah.
it's a character study. She's pregnant. She looks exhausted. You know, what is she doing in these mountains alone? You know, it says it all there.
Yeah, it
And
does.
this was my most successful launch to date in terms of how many backers I've had, and the numbers we've raised, and also the pre-launch followers. We nearly gotten to 200 by the time that I launched this, and that was something that I had not done before. I think the highest I'd ever gotten to was a little over 100. So I could tell that I I was learning. You know, I've been learning with all my projects, like how to sell a book better, how to pitch it better, how to keep things simpler for readers to get, and just how important that image is, that Kickstarter title card
Yeah.
is, especially for a
Yeah.
pre-launch page. And people will look at it, and it's 3 seconds. It takes 3 seconds, and that's
Yeah.
something I remember George Lucas saying is, if they don't know, like when he was designing his ships in the Star Wars movies,
Oh yeah.
he would say, if they don't know what this is in 3 seconds, there's a 3 second rule, then we gotta change it. They have to know what it looks like, and they have to know
Yeah.
its function in 3 seconds. So that's almost an impossible challenge, because it's like, wait a second, how can I do that? But when you find that, and you do it, and you do it well, it
Yeah.
provides results. You get the results that you want. And yeah, that's something that I've been really grateful for this campaign.
Yeah, I think that's again, I've kind of said this before, but I think you've been really smart about. I think something you really don't appreciate until you're about to post your Kickstarter page
Yeah.
is, okay, somebody's gonna look at this, they're scrolling down, they're doing other things. I really have to tell them every cool thing about what I'm trying to do here.
Right.
That
Right.
image, and it's generally just an image,
And
has to communicate all
it's so
those things.
difficult. Yeah, it's so difficult to do that, because you don't you like, with my stories, I really keep them close to the vest, and I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to ruin the reveals. I mean, what I love about um reading a story, and enjoying a story, is having those surprises, and having that experience, that, especially with comics, that it's a very, very individual, intimate experience that only you can have. You're not reading comics with other people. When you're reading a book or anything, it's like, it's you in the book. That's all there is. And so trying to decide which pages to show, and which ones we should feature, and all of that kind of stuff, it gets really complex, and kind of, it's using a part of my brain that I don't really like to use that often when it comes to marketing and trying to share things. But it's something that I have learned over the years, and the more books that I've made, I've been able to uh like find those money shots, and find those shots that people will be like, okay, I'm sold. And there's been so many people that have seen one page of this. I remember I posted a page of this when I was talking about the book and getting pre-launch followers for it. I posted it in some Facebook group, and this guy commented and he said, "I haven't read comics in like a decade or so. Um, I'm going to read this." Because of this one page, like this has brought me back to comics, and I'm like,
That's way
oh
cool.
my gosh, like that's insane. So
That's way cool. Yeah, very cool.
I mean, I think that's something when you do Kickstarters and we're independent creators, you have to think about it. You have to wear all those hats. You have to wear the Stan Lee hat.
Yeah.
You have to wear the Jack Kirby hat. You have to wear the publisher hat. That's a lot to do. And I remember when I was trying to come up with a cover for We Are Scarlet Twilight, I kind of know the things I like to draw, and I know those things would look really cool. At the same time, I was like, no, you can't just go at it that way. You have to be like, I have a certain amount of information I need to get across to you. I need to get the costume of this character, what he does. I need to get the vibe of his world. I needed to have that atmosphere of the 30s, and that really narrows down what you're trying to do as an artist. Yeah. I think as a writer or a project creator as well, you really have to concentrate not so much on like, does this sum up the story? Does this like sort of hint at the surprises in the book? You really have to think of like, hey, this is my image. Somebody's going to scroll past this. I need to say probably 3 to 5 things about my story and that are really cool. And then you build it from there. And I think this is a project that has done that. Now that image, you kind of described it perfectly, does all those things. It describes the artwork you're going to see. It describes the challenges the character faces, and it really gets all of that across.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been, I mean, I think it's been like I said, it's kind of proven itself, and I'm glad that you've been able, and other people have been able to receive that and get the quick pitch easy, and how it kind of hooks you just from the what do they say, like the art brings you to the comic, but the story keeps you or makes you stay. So I'm really proud of Marco, and I tell Marco all the time, like, this book is incredible because of you. People are buying this because of you. I hope they enjoy it because of me when they read it. But this, everything about comics, and when you go to a comic shop, you look at the covers, but you pick up a comic and you flip through it, and in those few seconds, I mean, you decide, and either it's subconscious, or unless the LCS owner or manager talks to you about it or tries to pitch you a book, you wouldn't, you just put it back and you wouldn't think of it ever again. And so trying to tug the reader in and get them to stay is such a challenge, and that's one of the most challenging but rewarding aspects of making comics, is being able to do that.
And I love that you brought that up, because Kickstarter is just like the shelf of a comic shop.
It is.
You walk in, you see all these comic books, right? But what pulls you in is the artwork, right? Like you said, the comic books are a visual medium. So the one thing that I always say is, because comics are a visual medium, your Kickstarter page needs to be visual as well, right? So you have a good balance of dialogue to visuals, or copy to visuals, right? So you want to make sure that you are sticking to that, right? There's and then that's, I think that if you can portray a good balance of that, I think you'll be successful in being clear and precise of what you are trying to get people to, because this is a Kickstarter. We're trying to get people to purchase these things, right? So you set everything in really great spots. You have pricing, all this different things that you don't think of when you actually have your head down, right, and creating, right.
Yeah.
Right? You gotta think about, now you
Exactly.
turn around and think about doing all these different things.
Yeah, I think that when we come up with projects as creators, we think of everyone looking at our project as they're picking up the book that's on the shelf, looking through it carefully, considering every page they see, deciding whether they like it. But in reality, we need to be thinking of the view of the customer that's looking at 30 books that are on the table that came out that week. Does my cover stand out? Does my cover
Yeah.
communicate what that is? You have so much
Exactly.
less
Yep.
time and so much less attention than you
Yeah.
actually think.
You
And
know
that's
what's funny
something
about
really
that,
valuable.
and I don't mean to interrupt you, but while we're on that topic, I was looking. So the weeks leading up to this launching this anthology, I was looking at the cover, the title pages of the title cards of each anthology, and we had a different one up there too. And I was like, well, this one is not standing out above the rest. So we switched up the title card, and it started standing out above the rest, and we got a ton more people following. Okay, sorry, go ahead,
Mm.
go back.
Oh no, I was done. And I have some guest stars tonight because we have a new cat
But yeah,
that is
like
downstairs.
little things like that, right? Changing things, like watching
Oh,
and going and learning and paying attention about, obviously, we're I don't like to say that we're on the shelf competing to one another, but you at least have to sit there and be like, okay, they have this out, that's gorgeous, right? I love that, people are going to buy
Yeah.
that. But we need to make sure, because the only thing that I can control is our project, right? So I'm going to control what that looks like, and I'm going to make sure that it stands out above the rest. And the way I do that is by looking at the peers that we have on the shelf next to us, and making sure that we are doing what we are supposed to be doing by trying to sell that thing and standing out above the rest, right? It's like being your own carnival barker, right? Getting out there
yeah.
and yelling, like who, like, or going to the carnival, or going to the fair, right? Where,
Yeah.
where those people are yelling at you, hey, you're like, oh no, dude, I don't want to play your game. You're just
Leave me alone.
they're the loud, but they're
Yeah.
the loudest ones yelling at you. Come on,
That's a
right?
good point. And I think that there are, this has gone back probably 15 years, but I was doing some design for a comic company way back. And they said, like, I gave them some really good designs. And they said, this is really great. I love how it looks. It looks very professional. They said, can we like PT Barnum this up a little bit? That
Mm.
has stuck with me. That was a
I love
great way of saying it. And it made a lot of sense. And it's
Yeah.
obviously lived with me for a long time. The
Yeah.
That's something you have to consider, and that doesn't mean you need to be outrageous and loud and over the top like a carnival barker would be, but you need to realize the job you're trying to do, which is
Yeah.
get the attention, get to illustrate the story,
Mhm.
really be clear about what what the value proposition of your story, of your campaign is. And
Yeah.
I think that's something as as creators, we just really have to be cognizant of when we're putting these things out. And I think campaigns are getting better at doing that. Nandor, yours is one of the best at doing that. And I think Don't Push the Red Button, just in the conception, the idea of it is a very simple pitch. And I think that's, these are ideas that work very well for what we're trying to do. I think geared towards the sort of storefront that Kickstarter and crowdfunding is kind of turned into.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Kickstarter has it's changed a lot over the years. I've been using it, and I've had books on it the last 5 or 6 years, and um I love how much it's grown, and I love how many people trust it more now than ever. I mean, I remember when I put my first book out in like 2017, 2018 on here. uh when you would talk about Kickstarter, and even with other creators, they were kind of like, what? Or like, does that work? Does that actually work? And now, crowdfunding has really taken over. But while I think a lot more people trust it, that also makes it a lot harder to get noticed because there's a lot more people on it. And so when you have everyone flocking to it, it 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 has its pros and cons because
Yeah.
you're even though you're getting more readers, more potential readers that are visiting, you're also trying your best to stand out amongst the crowd, and that it's a double-edged sword in that way, and that's something that I've really had to adjust for and really think about, and the kind of books that I want to put out, and the kind of advertising I want to do, and like I remember when Kickstarter didn't have a pre-launch page.
Mm.
That's a new thing that they had. I think implemented just like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And so it's something like using that to your benefit and trying to gain followers and gain signups for that has really kind of changed the game, and it can really affect the way your campaign, how successful it is and how it tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's
Yeah.
put us back in touch with some things that I think old school comics always had to deal with when they were on the newsstands. I remember reading an article, I think it was Julie Schwartz, recounting if you put purple on the cover, it sells better. If you have a gorilla, it's a Silver
A
Age stuff.
gorilla, yeah.
Gorilla on the cover, I don't know why, but it sells better. And they were like,
Yeah.
these were kind of just things they ran with, and those look silly to us now, but that is based on some really sort of nose of the grindstone experience where like, okay, we know where our comics are being sold, we know what they're being surrounded by, what the competition is, and I think it's good for us to. I think something the direct market did that's not great is that it let people be a little lazy, and that you could just be like, well, it's Superman, Like, I'm not knocking the mainstream necessarily, but like you could lean on something else instead of being like, hey, I have to earn this reader every month. Every pair of eyes I get on this has to be, really impressed with it. And I think that's something that Kickstarter has sort of forced us to get back in touch with.
Yeah.
And I really like that. I think that's smart. And I think it, from a creative perspective, when you're starting to think that way, it makes you a smarter writer because you're thinking about that in how you construct your story as well.
Right.
It gets you on the right path, as far as like, you're not just writing for yourself. You're not just sort of going with an audience that you assume will be there. You have to earn that audience every page turn. And that's, I think, something that as creators, it's really smart to do, and really smart to at least have in mind when you're planning out your stories.
Yeah. And I think Kickstarter has changed, right? Like you're saying, it used to be where people used to want to be involved with the whole entire process, right? You would fund the project, and then they would follow you through all the updates and all the different things that they would do through the project, and as work would come in, you would update people, and they would like to see the process like that, and then finally the book would come in about a year or two after, right? Now it's changed to where people really want to consume the book a little bit sooner, right? So they would love at least 50% of that done before you even kickstart your book, right? So that you can use it as a pre-order kind of page, right? And drum up that kind of support that way, and people get their books, within a couple of months rather than a couple of years like it used to be. So I think we kind of moved in different places, we moved forward and did better with the kind of changes that we've made with Kickstarter. You know what I mean? And the thing with the purple, that one still kind of stands actually.
That's why we're on this image. Yeah.
Color psychology going on.
They still love purple. They still love purple, blue, and pink. Like you get purple,
and
blue,
gorillas
and pink on there. Right?
Yeah. We can't forget. My next book is going to have a big gorilla on it.
We should next put up an anthology about monkeys, just like monkey stories.
I think
we'll just call it the purple anthology.
Yeah,
purple monkeys. We blow the house down.
Monkeys,
absolutely.
Purple monkey anthology. There you go. That's money right there in the bank.
I was thinking something while this conversation was going on, that I in some sense is interesting, this thing about what you present, because I think something that in my experience as a writer that I found is that I think the writing experience of comics in some sense is picking the right images in some, like, in what are you conceptualizing as the image. Because my background is as a filmmaker. I wrote for scripts for films. um I was a screenwriter, and I am actually, and a screenwriter in Brazil. But I'm trying to transition to comics, and one of my main difficulties is that basically comic books and films are both visual mediums. But with films, you have like 1,000 frames to tell everything. With comics, you have like the key frames. You have some specific imagery that has to be maximized. It's not so much about
Right.
what's on the page, about what would choose to leave out of the page. So in some sense, the Kickstarter marketing is like a sort of publicity esque development of that mindset. If you think about it, about choosing the right image to maximize the impact, it's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to pick the images. I think this is something as an artist you really focus on, but you need to build to a crescendo. You really need to get the best image. And I think the thing that illustrates that to me is, if you've ever looked at the book How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, that Buscema did a drawing where Stanley wrote it, and I think this is a great illustration of not just artistically what you should be focusing on, but I think comics in general. There's a thing where it's like Spider-Man throwing a punch, and I think he breaks it out into about 5 or 6 frames, and it looks like a time-lapse thing where he's like winding up, going through the motion, and he says like there are basically 6 images of Spider-Man here, but the first one and the last one are the most dramatic. That's what you need to go for.
Yeah.
That's obviously a brilliant thing to think of in terms of artwork, but it really also, I think, sums up what you need to do as a comic creator. You need to get those moments, the crescendo moments where things build, where it's dramatic. That's the images you need to highlight. And I think what you said about comparing that to film is really smart. And I think that there's so many film-ish comics now that some work really well and some don't. I think being cognizant of the differences between the mediums is what really makes comics work really well.
And I think you hit on key points there, with everybody, right? Like looking at this image we have right here on page, right? Not only are with the comic books, right? We have to do all that and you find those key images and maximize those, right? We have to do the same thing with the Kickstarter page, right? You have to maximize this title card here. You have to maximize it with the copy that you are telling them right here, because this is the only page that they see when they have a pre-launch, right? So everything on here, right here, has to tell them everything that you want them to know about this thing, to get them excited, to get them wanting to talk about it, to get them to share it, to get them to do anything, to anything actionable. This is what they're going to be doing, right? So you have to get these images right. Then you have to get the trailer, and then not only you can't just stop there. You have to find the correct rewards to offer, and then find the right pricing to put those in, right? And then you have to look at your budget and then say, okay, well, if I could print these for this much, if I sell them at this point, there's going to be a little bit of a profit, and then when we come out on the other end of it, we can fund another one, right? And then do it again. And because, right, this is what we're doing, right? We're kind of creating this sales funnel so that we can continue to put the money back into these projects to kind of continue to do it. And then now it's funding itself, right? That's what it's all about. And that's what we're doing with these Kickstarters, right? And you have to do every single thing on point, or as close to on point as possible, choosing which images you want to showcase, putting in the correct copy here, and coming up with the correct title cards and the correct trailers, and what you do within that trailer, and all these different things that you are kind of showing every single person, right? It's just like this image here where you have all these different frames. Your Kickstarter has all these different frames as well, and you have to make sure that you are hitting each one of those precise, right? And in the end of it, you're going to have this really beautiful layout, right? And then even then, the work is not done, right? Because now you have a 30-day campaign. You going out there and telling everybody, go look at my beautiful page because I spent tons of time on there, and buy some really cool stuff, right? And you just hope that you did a really good job on making sure that you found all the right rewards and put them in the perfect placement, right? So it's and then on top of it, and then it's not done. You still have to, then you have to fulfill these things and print these things, because that's what we're doing this for, is to get them into people's hands and to make sure that they are reading them, and then that we can do it again. So I think when you hit every single piece of those components, you can have a successful campaign, and you just got to make sure that you figure it out. But the way you do it is you always work. You're always working to grind, to grow your base, to grow your brand. You have different brandings, right? You have your own branding, and then you have your book branding, right? Your own branding is you and everything you do, and then your book has its own branding, right? So
Yeah.
and there's so much that goes into it, and that's where creators are like, man, I'm tired of that. I just want to put my head down and work. Right. So Ben, we definitely have a solution for people for that. If they
Absolutely.
are tired of doing that stuff and they want to put their head down and only work, what is that solution that they have?
They can head to geekcollective.net and contact us about putting together a campaign, and not just putting the campaign page together. We do trailers, we do mock-up images, we do just basically advice on pricing and all that stuff. Basically, and I found this when I'm a writer, artist. I do everything, including pre-press, is all me. When I started working with other people to put my campaigns together, it let me put really my process was so much faster, and I think so much better. So I think if you're a creator that's kind of looking to concentrate on your work, which is what you should be doing, it's great to collaborate with people like us at Geek Collective that can just help you do the other stuff and let you, I guess to put it simply, keep drawing your pages, and keep your mind on those things. Because I think that when you get into, and this is something I think I said a couple weeks ago, when I was putting together my first Scarlet Twilight campaign, something that really took a lot of time and also wasn't really resolvable was the fact that I was putting together spreadsheets and figuring out costs. But as much research as I did, and I did a lot, what I really got hung up on was the fact that it would take me so long to do the book while doing all the campaign stuff, made it so that maybe shipping is going to be so much more expensive once I actually get this thing done. So you really couldn't get to a good point where you could be confident in what you were going to need to price things out as. And that worried me a lot. There just was too much to do. So I think when you have to find a way to delegate the right task. If you're really good at marketing, maybe that's something you do, but you need to find people to help you with other stuff. And I think that's something I'm used to doing everything myself. And once I stopped doing that, it made my creative process so much better. And it also kind of illustrated that the things I was doing as far as logistical planning, that wasn't, if it takes long enough, a lot of that planning is useless. So you really do need to find ways to be intelligent about that. And that's what we do at Geek Collective, is help out with that stuff.
Yeah. And we work with everybody's budget. We can always work things out. And just like Ben said, if there's something that you're really good at and you only want to make sure that we handle some things, we can definitely talk with you and curate many different tiers and services that we can offer for you guys. So make sure you guys are using every tool that you guys are able to use, right? This is one of those things that we've created this because how many campaigns have you been involved in, Ben?
At this point, probably 7 or 8, I think.
And then I've done 23, 24 campaigns with all the different people that I've worked with and helped with them market their stuff and build their campaigns. Some of them are 3 different teams are repeat customers. So we've been around the block with doing these things and trying to making sure that we are making setting these things at the clear precise rewards, right? Because that's one of those things that I found when I started doing this stuff, was it's really hard to keep your projects clear sometimes. So we can make sure that that's clear and precise for those, so people can know what they're buying, and do it because you want them, just like Nandor said, it only takes them 3 seconds to make a decision, and you want to make sure that you have all that stuff right there at their fingertips so that they can make the best decision for everybody, right? So make sure you do that. And another thing we want to make sure that we stress, budget, right? Budget is one of those things that is really hard when it comes to this stuff. So you're always thinking about shipping costs and all these different crazy things and all the stuff that's adding up. It can be a nightmare. So we've partnered with Gemini Mailing Supply to give you guys a 10% off code. So if you guys are using we suggest that you use Gemini mailers, because we've seen the nightmares where people have received their stuff and it's damaged, and that's the worst thing, right? Getting something in when you're looking forward to it and it comes in damaged, right? So one way that you can do that and stop it from being so damaged is by using a Gemini mailer, and using that 10% off code. I've seen people use it and say, dude, I'm so glad you had this. It saved me $200. That $200 you can use somewhere else, right? You can pay sometimes people, you can buy a cover for $200. So you can get a whole new cover for your next project for the money that you saved on this one, right? So make sure you guys are using Geek Collective 10 at checkout at GeminiMailingSupply.com.
Yeah, I always feel like I sound fake when I say this, because I think I say it every week. Literally every week I see somebody on Twitter saying, I got this comic, it was bent up, it was sent in a plastic mailer, I'm upset. And it really does happen. And Gemini mailers are not made of, they're not bulletproof. But if you do send something in a Gemini mailer and something happens, nobody's going to blame you. That it's like, it is the last mile of your project. It's as important as every other part of it. And I think it just, we talk about the value proposition of our projects a lot, and we have tonight. I think that you really have to carry that through to every part of your project. You have to make sure when you're selling your project that it's everything you want to say. You need to go that last mile and make sure that when people get that in the mail, that the same care has been taken there, because backers really do notice that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think that does it for tonight. Matt, Nandor, it was great to have you on the show. I was really excited to talk about these books, and I've had a great time. Thank you for coming on. And everyone who's watching, go ahead and check out the links we have in the description. You can get to Kickstarter and back these great books. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks for having me.